everyone, Kelly here, and it's time for another book haul. I feel like I just did a book haul not that long ago, but I've accumulated a lot of stuff lately, and I think it's because I was doing a lot of purchasing for homeschool, like preparing for homeschool for the year, and that like inspired me to just, you know, like when you start spending money, you're just like, oh, now I want to spend more money and buy more things. And so it just kind of spiraled into like, you know, I bought stuff for homeschool from the homeschool budget, and then I just was like, well, I've got fun money, I'm gonna spend that too. So here are the books that I've bought in the last couple months. And there are a lot of books, so let's just get into it. So first I have Remasa by Radia, Havisa, and this is a retelling of 3 different fairy tales. It has Rapunzel and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, and they're told from a Muslim perspective, and this is just a beautiful cover. I've heard couple people read this and said it was good. I wanted to read it first and see if it's at the appropriate age to share with my daughter, my first grade daughter, to kind of like give her a variety of different retellings of different fairy tales, so she's just not hearing the Eurocentric version of all kinds of fairy tales and folk tales. You'll see later I have another one later on that is some other non-Eurocentric ones too. And then I also was just in the mood for some scary stories, and I love scary middle grade, so I just picked up Scary Stories for Young Foxes by Christian Mckay Heidecker. And this is a collection of short stories. I think this is middle grade level, and it's just so cute, and I think this will be a fun kind of fall read to do. I don't know what is the age category in this, so I'm going to read it myself before I pass it on, but if nothing else, I'll keep it on my shelf for when my kids are older. And then I also picked up Bambi by Felix Sultan, and this is what the movie was based off of. And I picked this up because How to Train Your Gavin on his channel, he's doing this thing where he's reading the books that inspired the Disney animated movies, and he had done one recently which included Bambi, and he really liked this book, and he said it was a really great nature story, and it sounded really interesting from what he was saying. So I am interested in seeing what the origin story of Bambi is. And another one that I'll probably pass it on my kids a little later. I heard it's a little violent. It's about nature, so if it's like just nature, normal life cycle, it might still be something I read with my daughter, because she is perfectly fine with like predator prey kind of graphic things, because we watch nature documentaries. But I want to see, because if it's a lot of hunting, we might hold off on that a little bit before we get into that part with guns and stuff like that, violence of humans against animals. I want to make sure we explain, you know, when that's appropriate and things like that. And then one that is a read aloud that I want to do with my daughter is How Tia Lola Came to Stay by Julia Alvarez. And this I just found on a list of like good read alouds for kids around the like first grade age, and this was in a used bookstore when I was looking for some books for homeschool, and so I picked it up. This isn't necessarily part of our curriculum, but we'll pick it up sometime this year because we're really like cruising through read aloud books. And then this next one is specifically for the Fall Into Reading Challenge. I got A Study in Scarlet Women by Sherry Thomas. This is like a Sherlock Holmes retelling, but the main character is a woman, and since it's at a time period where women aren't really supposed to be investigating murders and things like that, she is Sherlock Holmes. So she's like using Sherlock Holmes as her, you know, hidden identity so that people don't know that it's a woman investigating these murders and things like that. This is a whole series, but we are reading this first book in November, I believe, for the Fall Into Reading Challenge. So you still have a couple months to, you know, get the book or get it from the library or whatever. And we'll be reading this together in November. I'm really excited because I'm also in the middle of reading all of the Sherlock Holmes original stories, so it'll be fun to kind of like throw in a retelling. And then this next one was definitely a booktube made me do it. I picked up Finding Langston by Lisa Klein Ransom. This is the first, and I think it's a trilogy right now. They're really short, like novellas, and everybody raves about them. And this one is specifically, I think it doesn't have the synopsis on the back, but from what I remember from hearing other people talk about it, it's about this boy that he moves to Chicago, I think, and you know, he's getting used to his new place, and I think he goes to the library to hang out and finds out about Langston Hughes, the poet, but then our main character is also named Langston, so he finds it interesting that this famous poet has the same name as him. And that's all I know, and I'm really excited to start this trilogy because everybody that reads it seems to be raving about it. So actually my plan is to read this month in September, so I'm looking forward to that one. And then I picked up a nonfiction that I've had on my wish list for a while, and it was on sale, so I figured it was the time to get it. And this is Be the Bridge, Pursuing God's Heart for Racial Reconciliation by Latasha Morrison. And this is just a nonfiction book. This is pretty much exactly what the subtitle says. It's her discussing kind of like racism within the church and how the church can like help bridge that divide in the racial divide because the church has contributed a lot to that racial divide. So I think that'll be a great one to read. And then I have a duology that at first I picked up, Clockwork Boys by T. Kingfisher, which is a fantasy book. And I read this book last week and liked it so much that I went and right away picked up the sequel. So this is just a duology. It actually is just one book, really. Like, I read the first book and it doesn't end. This is all just one story, but she's a self-published author, so I think she split it up just so it wasn't like a huge, intimidating book for people, but you really need to read it basically as one story because it doesn't really have an ending in the first book. So I'm going to be picking up the sequel right away because I did really enjoy it. I love her humor. Like I said, she's a self-published author or a small press author, so a lot of people haven't heard of her. So I would highly recommend her if you like fantasy and you have like sarcastic, dry humor, because these are just so funny. Like, I love how her characters just seem like normal people with a sense of humor and awkwardness and things like that thrown into a fantasy world. So basically this story is about a paladin, an assassin, a forger, and a scholar right out of town. Sounds like the start of a joke, but really it's a suicide mission to save this, you know, community or village or kingdom or whatever from these things called the Clockwork Boys, which are kind of like giant robot kind of soldiers that are just, you know, killing everybody in their paths. So they are sent out to try to like save everyone. And yeah, it's just my perfect humor. I'll let you know, I'm going to be reviewing the Clockwork Boys in my August wrap-up, which I don't know whether that's coming out before this or not, so you might have already heard me talk about this. But when I finish both of them, I will go into a little more depth because I do think more people should be picking up T. Kingfisher. Sorry, this shouldn't be a review, but I just really like to promote independent authors because, you know, they just don't have as widespread of a support as, you know, the mainstream authors. And then I have 4 books by the same author I picked up because Kara from Wilde Book Garden and Linh Hermione, Hannah from Linh Hermione, she has a blog, and they are doing a Frances Hardinge read-along where they're reading one Frances Hardinge book every month for like the next, you know, I don't know how long, 8 months or something like that. So I picked up 4 of them because they were deeply on sale on Book Outlet, and so I figured I really wanted to participate because I already own 2 of her books and now I own 6 total, so I can really participate in this read-along. So the 4 that I just picked up are Fly by Night, and this one is about a girl who is taught to read by her father, and this is taking place in a fantasy world where reading is kind of forbidden or people just don't do it, and I think it's just like the power of words and things like that. And then I have Gallstruck Island. I don't know a lot about this one, but just the very beginning is talking about how in this world volcanoes are alive, and when you make them angry, they proceed to erupt and do, you know, horrible things to the world around them and things like that. So I don't know. This is a beautiful cover. I know it's really dark, but I love the like butterfly and the coloring. I just love all of the covers of these books, so I just couldn't help buy them because if nothing else, they are beautiful. I'm really hoping what's inside is just as beautiful. And then I have A Skinful of Shadows, and this one is a world where when spirits die, sometimes they try to go into other people's bodies, and our main character in this has really like done a hard a job of trying to make sure that no spirit goes into her body, but then she lets her guard drop one day and now she has a spirit inside of her. And the last one I bought from Frances Hardinge was Face Like Glass. And this one doesn't have a description on the back, but from what I remember, I think this is kind of very reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland. Like, I think it's a portal fantasy, but don't take my word for it. You can go look it up if you want. But like I said, all of these are going to look beautiful on my shelf. And I just like the like dark look of these. And I hope that they are just really good. And then I got some books for free. So basically Kellogg's has this program called the Feeding Reading Program, I believe it is. And it's basically where you can buy certain of their products during this time. I think it's around like August through October. You can buy products by Kellogg's, and if you turn in your receipt, you can get free books for each of the products that are on this like list of things. And they were products that I already buy, like some cereals and Nutri-Grain bars and things like that. And so I was like, yeah, if you want to give me free books, great. You can get up to 6 free books. And I ended up just getting 5 books because my grocery store just was doing curbside pickup and they didn't have one of the items. And, you know, I didn't take the trouble to like send in another receipt later for the 6 books. So I got 5 free books. I think that's good. They're all like kids books, so they have a category for picture books, middle grade, and young adult. I got mostly middle grade because the picture books, all the ones that were good, I already owned. What I do really appreciate about this was, you know, they don't have a lot of books to choose from, but they had a really diverse selection in terms of author diversity and character diversity and things like that. So I think that's a really great program to be giving people free books and to have such a diverse list of books to pick from. So the first one is called Birdie and Me by J.M.M. Nuanez, and I had never heard of this book, but when I saw the synopsis, it sounded really interesting. This is about Jack and Birdie who, when their mom dies, they have to go and live with their uncles, I believe. And Birdie is being made fun of at school because they are gender neutral and so are being bullied by other kids at school because of their gender nonconformity. And so I thought that was a great like representation in a middle grade novel. And then I have The Mighty Miss Malone by Christopher Paul Curtis. I've heard about this author for a long time and that their books are really great. And so when I saw this on there, I wanted to pick it up. I don't even remember what this book is about. 12-year-old Deza Malone is the smartest student in her class, and her brother Jimmy is no angel, but he likes to sing like one. So this is during the Great Depression, and they're hit hard. And yeah, that's all. I'm just really quickly like looking over the summary in the back. That doesn't really tell you much, but I think it's gonna be a family drama during the Depression. So, and then next I have a nonfiction book, which is The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind by William Kamkwamba and Brian Mueller. And this one has like an adult version of this book, but this is the young readers version. So I wanted to read it, check it out, see what age I can share this with my kids. And this is about the first author, William. This is, you know, his story about when he was a boy and famine had struck his village in Africa and they were losing crops and things like that. And he figured out a way to build this windmill to bring energy to their village. So I'd heard great things about this and wanted to pick up the Young Readers edition so that I could pass it on to my kids. And then I got this little book, Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes by Eleanor Kaur. And I had heard of this story before, and this I think is based off of a true story which celebrates the courage that made one young woman a heroine in Japan. So I have heard of this story, but I don't remember what it is exactly about, but it's very short, so maybe I'll be able to read it this month to share with you. And then the last one was the only young adult one I got, which is A Time to Dance by Padma Venkatrama. And this one is written in verse, and this is about a girl who she loves to dance, and she's injured in a bus accident, and her right leg must be amputated. And so she doesn't think she will dance again, but that she's really passionate about her dream and just her resilience and things like that. So I think I'd seen that the reviews of this one was really good, so I want to pick that one up. So those are the books that I got free through the Kellogg's program. So look it up. I think you can still do it through October if you want to get books for your kids. And then next I have a pile of books that are books for school. So books I had bought for homeschooling, but they're the ones that I'm like really excited about reading myself as well, like reading them with my daughter, because they just sounded interesting. So I'm just gonna kind of go through them by subject. Just go through them quickly in case you're interested. First, I have The Tarantula in My Purse and 172 Other Wild Pets by Jean Craighead George. And this is a little like kind of memoir book about this naturalist who ended up with a lot of different wild pets throughout their career or time with their family. And every chapter is like a new wild animal pet. And not that I'm condoning owning wild animals, I don't know how this, because this was part of our curriculum, I'm hoping that since she's a naturalist that she's like rehabilitating animals and things like that, because I don't you know, believe in just taking wild animals and making them your pets. So we shall see, but I am interested because I've heard this one is really funny. And then also for nature, we have Heroes of the Environment by Harriet Romer. And this is like a nonfiction book about, I think, 11 different like people who are helping in the environment. So each one's a different topic. There's like raising food in the city, a new way to clean polluted water, and just like stories of real people who are doing work in their communities for the environment. So I'm interested in sharing that one with my kid. And then we're going to do a human body unit, and this one I've heard is great. It's called Human Body Theater by Wicks, and this is a graphic novel all about the different systems in the body. So each, like, it's set up like an actual play. So there's like Act 1 and Act 2 and all that stuff. And so like Act 1 is the skeletal system, and then Act 2 is the muscular system. So it goes through all of the systems in the body. And I think this will just be a great one to read with my daughter. And I'm looking forward to it too. I think it sounds like a fun way to learn about the body. And then as part of our music curriculum, we are focusing on 2 types of music this year. We're doing folk music. And for that, I already had like a book of folk music and getting stuff off of Spotify and stuff like that. But then we're also going to study opera. And this is the Barefoot Book of Stories from the Opera, retold by Shakruk Hussain. And this one is like several different operas, and it is like telling the story of the opera. So here we have the Magic Flute. It's illustrated, and so it's like written on the kids level with pictures and things like that. So you read the story of the opera, and then we will listen to the opera while we're doing like art or something like that, have it in on the background just to introduce her to opera. And I actually myself don't know much about opera, so I think it'll be fun to actually hear some of the stories behind opera and try to find an appreciation for this form of music that I personally don't know much about. So I'm looking forward to it. And then as part of like our morning time, at least once a week, we read about like important people in history, people that have done different things for the world. And so as part of that, I picked up this book called Black Heroes, 51 Inspiring People from Ancient Africa to Modern Day USA. And this is exactly what it's called. So it starts way back in Africa, like ancient Egypt, and is talking about some of the people from back in ancient times, and then just goes through time into different people all the way up to, I think the last couple people in here are Barack Obama and the Williams sisters. So a lot of people throughout time. So this will be one we're going to actually start when we start learning about ancient Egypt, so we can kind of tie it in through that, and then we're just going to pick somebody to learn about each week, or maybe a couple people a week, since there's 51 people in here. So I think that'll be a great way to kind of diversify learning about different important people in history. And then because we are focused through our history on ancient civilizations and also myths from those civilizations, I picked up this book called Gods and Heroes, Mythology Around the World by Corwin Briggs. And this has gods, goddesses, heroes from a whole bunch of different civilizations. So they have ancient Greece and ancient Rome and ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia and just like all kinds of different ones, you know, some great art. And then like with each person or god or hero myth, it's like about 3 pages. So I think this will be a good one that we will just pick up by, because we're learning ancient civilizations by like civilization instead of like through a timeline. So I think this will be a great way to introduce some myths to my daughter. And I also want to learn more about different myths, because I just don't know. I might know a lot about like the Greek myths, but it'll be nice to hear about myths from other civilizations other than Greece, because there's plenty out there. And the last one in this school category is Folk Tales for Fearless Girls by Miriam Salero. And in her introduction, she talks about how, you know, so many of the fairy tales that we, you know about are very centered on the hero being a prince who saves the princess and things like that. And so she wanted to have stories that more focused on like a heroine as the main character. And so these are stories from different places around the world. So there's some from Spain, India, Russia, China, Southern Africa, so different folk tales around the world. And there is some full page illustrations and things like that. Only one for each story, which is a little disappointing. I thought there would be more illustrations when I'm reading it out loud to my daughter, but she still seemed to enjoy it when we read the first one. And then the last thing in this haul are all the books that I bought because I wanted to kind of have things that I read alongside what we learned in school, like me and my daughter read together. So these are books for me to kind of continue my education through the same subjects I'm teaching her. And I talked about all of these books in a video I did called My Reading Plans for the Year or for the school year or something like that. I'll link that down below if you'd rather watch that, because I'm going to just tell you the books here. I'm not going to go into depth. I'll just tell you which ancient civilization or school subject they're related to, because I don't want to go in depth since I did go into more detail in that video. Also, if you've seen that video, you probably could stop watching this one now because, like I said, I talked about all these in depth. So the first ones are a couple that are from science that we are learning. Like I said, we're doing a human body unit. So I picked up Body Talk by Kelly Jensen. This is a collection, or this is edited by Kelly Jensen. So this is a collection of different authors or people writing essays about the human body. And then we are studying Darwin a little bit. So I got Darwin, His Daughter, and Human Evolution by Randall Kins. And this is a biography about Darwin, focused more on his family life than his actual, there is obviously about evolution and his theories and things like that, but it's focusing on the family side more prominently. And then I got The Soul of an Octopus by Cy Montgomery because we are studying oceans this year in science. And then the rest of these are all about ancient civilizations. So this first one is actually a read aloud I'm doing with my daughter from Mesopotamia. And this is The Golden Bull by Marjorie Cowley. And then when we study Egypt, I plan on reading the nonfiction The Woman Who Would Be King by Kara Cooney, which is about one of the female pharaohs in ancient Egypt. And then I have The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan, which is the first in the Kane Chronicles, which involves Egyptian gods and goddesses. And then the next civilization is ancient Greece, and there are, of course, obviously lots of retelling of Greek myths and things revolving around ancient Greece. So first of all, I have this retelling of the Odyssey, and this one is a big, like, illustrated version. I showed some illustrations in that, but like I said, it just is beautiful, so I'm really excited to read this retelling with a lot of nice illustrations. I also picked up The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, because, you know, this is a very popular one, retelling of the Iliad. And then I have the Penelopead by Margaret Atwood, which is revolves around Odysseus's wife. So it's like the story of the Odyssey, but from his wife's point of view. And then I have The Trials of Apollo by Rick Riordan, which book one is The Hidden Oracle. That's the first in that series. And in that video when I hadn't bought this one yet, so now I have a copy of this one as well. So I'm looking forward to probably reading a lot of retellings of the Greek myths and things like that. And then next we'll be studying ancient India, and I picked up Palace of Illusions by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, and this is a retelling of the Indian epic, the Mahabharata, and so that one will be an interesting one. And then I also picked up the Ramayana, which is a retelling of the ancient epic by Linda Eugenides and Kumuda Reddy. And then we move on to ancient Rome, which also has lots of books revolving around ancient Rome and the myths and the legends and stories of that time. And so I have this one called Lavinia by Ursula K. Le Guin. And this is the one that pops up when I looked up like myths and stories from ancient Rome. And that is revolves around the Aeneid and telling it from the point of view of Lavinia, which I believe is the main character from that legend's wife. And then I have Pompeii by Robert Harris, and this is just a historical fiction about the time right before the eruption. And then I have Julius Caesar by Shakespeare, and Antony and Cleopatra by Shakespeare. And then to continue learning about Cleopatra, I picked up Cleopatra, A Life by Stacey Schiff, which is just a biography of Cleopatra. And then we'll be studying ancient Africa, and I picked up Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky by Kwame Mbalia. And this combines mythology both from like Western Africa, but then also from Black America. And so it'll be a little combination of both of those. And then last, we'll be learning about ancient China. And so I picked up the Magnolia Sword, A Ballad of Mulan by Sherry Thomas. And this is a retelling of the Mulan story, which is not actually a story from ancient China. It's from later than that, but I still really wanted to read another retelling of Malone, so that's what I picked up. I have a couple others that are actually like more about ancient stories. So yeah, that's it. It's a huge haul. A lot of them are books that I'm planning on reading throughout the school year, like I said in that book, so they'll be spaced out along the way. If you read any of these, I'd love to hear from you, and I will see you next time. Bye.